the performance can't continue the way it's been running, and that feels threatening. Not because change is bad, but because the performance has been your safety net for so long that living without it feels like living in a way that, like you're almost free falling. Welcome back to the Awake and Aligned Woman podcast. I'm Dr. Phyllis, your coach. Last week, I asked you to try something. 5 minutes of intentional stillness, not crashing, not collapsing, choosing. And if you did it even once, I'm proud of you because I know how hard it is to sit still when everything in you is wired to keep moving. But here's what I think might have happened in that stillness. Something came up. Maybe it was quiet. Maybe it was uncomfortable. Maybe it was a question you weren't even expecting. And I think for some of you, the question sounded something like this. You've spent decades becoming who everyone needs you to be. But do you even remember who you were before the world started placing orders? Well, that's what we're talking about today in episode 136. And I want to warn you, sis, up front. This one might sting a little, not because I'm trying to hurt you, but because the truth has a way of doing that when we've been avoiding it for a while. I think some of us have been so busy building the version of ourselves that the world has asked for, the capable one, the reliable one, the one who handles everything, that we lost the original somewhere along the way. And we didn't even notice she was gone. We were too busy performing to really realize that the woman doing all the performing, hmm, she's a character. And the real one, the one who desires and dreams and has preferences and things that make her come alive. She's been sitting in the back room waiting for someone to come find her. So today, sis, let's go find her. Let me ask you a few questions, and I want you to answer them honestly. No polished answers, the real ones. What's your favorite color? And I don't mean the one you painted your living room with because it looked nice on the Pinterest. I mean the one that makes you just get excited. The one that makes something in your chest light up when you see it. Do you know? What kind of music do you listen to when nobody else is in the car? Not what you play for the kids, not what's on in the background at work. What do you actually love to listen to? What's the last thing you did purely for fun? Not for productivity, not for self improvement, not for your family, not for your resume, just because it made you happy. If you're struggling to answer these questions, I want you to hear me. That's not a small thing, sis. Those are the most basic expressions of personhood. Your favorite color, your music, what brings you joy. And if you've been so consumed by roles and responsibilities that you can't access those questions quickly, that tells you something important. That's what's happened to your identity. Here's what I see in so many women. And I'm talking about brilliant, accomplished, deeply capable women. Women who can run a department, manage a household, coordinate a ministry, and still show up for everybody else's crisis before lunch. These women can tell you everyone else's preferences. They know what their kids like, they know what their husband needs, they know what their co-worker is going through. They know what their mom would want. They can anticipate everyone else's needs before they're even spoken. But ask her, what do you want? And she freezes. Not because she's not smart, not because she's not self aware, but because somewhere along the way, that question stopped being relevant. What she wanted got pushed to the bottom of the list so many times that eventually it fell off the list entirely. And she stopped noticing. She stopped asking herself. She stopped even feeling the desire because desire requires space. And there was no space left. She didn't lose herself in one dramatic moment. She lost herself one yes at a time, one accommodation at a time, one, it's fine, I don't mind at a time. Until the woman who had opinions, who had passions, who had that spark in her eye about something, she just went quiet. And what replaced her was a function, a role, a title on a door, and a name on everyone's emergency contact list. Yet she's not a person anymore. She's a position. And the scariest part, she's so good at that position that nobody, not even her, noticed the person disappeared. So, how does this happen? How does a woman with this much intelligence, this much depth, this much life in her, how does she wake up one day and realize she doesn't know what she likes anymore? It happens slowly, and it happens because the world rewards it. Think about it. Nobody ever pulled you aside and said, "Hey, you're disappearing. You're becoming a function instead of a person." No, they said, "I don't know what we do without you." They said, "You're so strong. You're so resilient." They said, "You always know what to do." Every time you erased a preference to accommodate someone else, sis, the world called it maturity. Every time you buried a desire to meet a deadline, the world called it dedication. Every time you put yourself last, the world called it selflessness. And so you kept doing it because it worked, because it was rewarded, because at some point, the applause and the affirmation became the only way you knew you were doing okay. Your identity shifted slowly, quietly, from being rooted in who you are to being rooted in what you do and how well you do it for other people. And here's the part nobody talks about. It's not just that you lost yourself, it's you replaced yourself with a version that felt safer. Because the real you, the one who has desires and dreams and preferences, she's vulnerable. She can be disappointed. She can want something and not get it. She can try something and fail. She can say, "This is what I want." And someone might say, "That's not good enough." But the performing version of you, sis, hmm, she's bulletproof. She doesn't want things for herself, so she can't be let down. She doesn't have preferences, so she can't be criticized for them. She just serves. She just delivers. She just shows up. And as long as the results keep coming, she feels like she exists. But, sis, existing and living are not the same. They're not the same. I want to share something with you. There was a season in my life after God had already pushed that infamous and also famous emergency stop button on my autopilot treadmill. after I had already started waking up, where I was pondering the potential transition from 29 years of full time medical practice. 29 years. That's not just a career, that's an identity. That's how the world knew me. That's how I knew me. That's how I knew me. And I was talking it over with my husband, processing it out loud. And I asked him what he thought about the idea of transitioning, of doing something different. And his response floored me. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, sounds good. I really want to see you do something where you have fun. Fun? That one word hit me like a truck, one of those Mack trucks, one of those humongous trucks, because I realized I could not remember, sad to say, the last time fun had been a factor in any decision I made. Not my career decisions, not my daily choices, not even my weekends. Everything was filtered through responsibility, through duty, through what needs to be done and who needs me and what's the most productive use of my time. Fun wasn't even on the list. It had been it had not been on the list in so long that when my husband said it, I didn't even know what it meant for me anymore. I had to sit with that one. I had to actually ask myself, what is fun to me? What brings me joy? Not accomplishment, not satisfaction from completing a task, not the relief of checking something off, actual joy, actual excitement. And I didn't have an answer, not right away. And that was the moment I realized I had just been living on autopilot in terms of my schedule. I had been living on autopilot, oh my gosh, in terms of my identity. I had been running on a definition of myself that was built entirely on external validation. Degrees, titles, being needed, being excellent, being the one people called, and none of that told me who I actually was. It only told me what I could do. I had to learn the difference between excitement that comes from an internal place, that spark that belongs to you and it belongs to me, that has nothing to do with anyone else's opinion. And the validation that comes from the outside. And I'm going to tell you, they feel similar on the surface, but they are not the same thing. External validation fills you for a moment and then demands more. Let me say that again. External validation fills you for a moment and then demands more. Internal joy says fills you and then overflows. And I think that's where some of you are right now. You've been running on external fuel for so long, the promotions, the praise, the I don't know what we do without you, that you don't even know what your internal fuel is anymore. And it's not because you haven't had space to access it. You just haven't been still enough to hear it. And that's why last week's episode mattered. That's why the stillness comes first. That's why the stillness comes first, because you will never rediscover who you are at the pace you've been living. You'll never discover who you are at the pace that you're living. Identity doesn't reveal itself in the hustle, it reveals itself in the quiet. There's a verse that I want us to anchor in today. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Before the degrees, before the career, before the marriage, before the kids, before the caregiving, before the titles and the roles and the responsibilities and the reputation, before any of it, God already knew you. Not the performing version, not the role playing version, not the version that shows up to board meetings and church committees and family gatherings with everything handled. The real you, the one you're scared might not be impressive enough without all the accolades. The one who likes what she likes and wants what she wants and has dreams she stopped talking about because they didn't seem practical. God knew her. He formed her. He set her apart, not the function, the person. And if God took time to know you before you ever performed a single thing, then maybe, just maybe, your identity was never supposed to be built on performance in the first place. Maybe it was supposed to be built on the simple, unshakable truth that you were known and set apart before you ever did anything to earn it. You didn't earn your identity, sis. You were given one, and it's still there underneath the roles, underneath the titles, underneath the exhaustion and the performing and the years of, I'm fine. I don't need anything. She's still in there, and she's waiting for you to come find her. So maybe you're sitting there with this right now and you're feeling two things at once. Part of you is saying, she's right. Dr. Phyllis is right. I don't know who I am outside of what I do. And another part of you is saying, okay, but what am I supposed to do about that? I can't stop being a mother. I can't stop being a leader. I can't just walk away from my responsibilities and go on some journey of self discovery. And you're right. You're right. You can't. And I'm not asking you to. But here's what I want to offer you as a challenge. The lie keeps you stuck. The lie that keeps you stuck isn't that you don't have time to rediscover yourself. The lie really is, listen to me closely, sis. The lie is that rediscovering yourself requires some massive, dramatic overhaul, that you need to quit something, leave something, dismantle something. So let me say that again. The lie really is that to rediscover yourself requires some massive dramatic production that requires you to quit something, leave something, or dismantle something. Furthermore, the lie is that finding yourself again is this enormous, impossible project that you'll get to one day when things calm down. That is a complete lie. It's a lie. and it keeps you frozen because one day will never come. And so the real you stays buried, not because she's gone, but because you keep telling yourself the excavation, the the digging, the going deep, the process is too big to start. That it's just too hard to start. Does this sound familiar? It's just too big. That's what your mind is telling you. It's too big to start. But what if finding yourself again doesn't start with a grand gesture? What if it starts with the smallest, most seemingly insignificant question you could ask yourself? What do I actually want right now? Not what needs to happen, not what's expected, not what would be most efficient or most helpful or most responsible. Just what do I want right now in this moment? And I mean the smallest things, sis, the things that you think don't matter, because they do. They matter more than you realize. You're standing in the kitchen on a Saturday morning. You're about to make breakfast. And instead of defaulting to what everyone else wants, what if you ask yourself, what do I actually feel like eating? And maybe you don't know. Maybe that question feels oddly difficult. That's okay. Sit with it. Let yourself not know for a minute and then let an answer come without judging it, without filtering it through what's practical, what's already in the fridge. Or you're in the car by yourself. You reach for the radio or the podcast app, and instead of going to your default, you ask yourself, what do I actually want to listen to right now? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's silence. Maybe it's that song you used to love 15 years ago that has nothing to do with who you are now. Except maybe it has everything to do with who you are and you just forgot. Or you have an unexpected free hour. Nobody needs you, nothing is urgent. And instead of immediately filling it with something productive, the emails, the errands, the meal prep, you ask yourself, if I could do anything with this hour just for me, what would I do? These are not frivolous questions, sis. They are identity questions. Every time you ask yourself what you actually want and then honor the answer, you are rebuilding the connection to yourself that years of autopilot severed. You are telling the real you, I see you, you're still here, and what you want matters. You are telling the real you, I see you, you're still here, and what you want matters. And I want you to be honest with yourself about something, as I want to be honest with you. This is going to feel uncomfortable at first, not because it's hard, because it's unfamiliar. You have spent so many years orienting your entire life around other people's needs that turning the lens inward is going to feel selfish. It's going to feel indulgent. Something in you is going to resist and say, this is ridiculous. I have real things to deal with. I don't have time to sit here and think about what kind of music I like. That resistance, that's not wisdom. That's the autopilot fighting to stay in control. That's the performing self trying to keep the real self quiet because performing self knows if you start listening to who you actually are, The performance can't continue the way it's been running, and that feels threatening. Not because change is bad, but because the performance has been your safety net for so long that living without it feels like living in a way that, like you're almost free falling, just falling. But here's what I want you to consider. What if the free fall, that falling feeling, is actually freedom? What if on the other side of I don't know who I am is the most exciting season of your life? Not because everything changes overnight, but because for the first time in decades, you're living from the inside out instead of outside in. Because for the first time in decades, you're living from the inside out instead of the outside in. You're not performing for the applause anymore. You're not chasing the next achievement to feel like you're enough. You're discovering, maybe for the first time since you were a young girl, what it feels like to do something simply because you want to, because it brings you joy, because it makes you come alive. That internal spark, that excitement that has nothing to do with anyone else's validation. That's not a luxury. That's not a reward for finishing all your responsibilities. That is your God given design. God didn't create you to be a function. He created you to be a person with desires, with passions, with a unique way of experiencing the world that no one else on this planet shares. And when you start, sis, to access that again, even in the smallest ways, something shifts. It shifts. You start to show up differently, not because you've abandoned your roles, but because you stop letting the roles define you. You're still a mother, you're still a leader, you're still the woman who shows up, but now you're showing up as yourself, not as a character you've been playing for 30 years or more. So here's your practice for this week. And it builds on last week's 5 minutes of stillness. This week, I want you to ask yourself one question 3 times a day. I'm laughing because it almost sounds like I'm prescribing you, right? But take it as a prescription. I want you to ask yourself one question 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. The question is, what do I actually want right now? Not what I need to do, not what's next on the list, but what do I want? And then here's the most important part: honor the answer, even if it's small, even if it's, I want to sit outside for 5 minutes, even if it's, I want to eat something I actually enjoy instead of whatever's fastest, even if it's, I want to say no to this thing I already said yes to. Honor it, because every time you do, you're not just making a choice, you're making a declaration. You're saying, I'm still in here and I matter, not because of what I produce, but because of who I am. Not because of what I produce, but because of who I am. Okay. I want you to practice this. So I want to get quiet with you for a minute because I know what some of you are feeling right now, and I want to name it before you talk yourself out of it. Okay. Some of you are feeling grief. Some of you are feeling grief in this moment. Not the kind of grief you feel when you lose someone, the kind of grief you feel when you realize you've lost yourself and you don't know exactly when it happened. You can't point to a date on the calendar and say, that's when I disappeared. It wasn't that clean and neat. It was slow. It was invisible. And the grief is complicated because the life you built isn't bad. You're not ungrateful. You love your family. You're proud of your career. You value things you've accomplished. But there's this ache underneath it all, this quiet, low hum that says, something is missing. And I think the something that's missing is me. And if that's where you are right now, sis, in that tender, confusing place, I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not having a midlife crisis. You're not being dramatic. You are having a holy reckoning. You are waking up, and waking up doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like loss because, in a way, it is. You're grieving the years, the moments, the version of yourself you set aside to become what everyone else needed. And I want to speak to the woman who's listening right now and thinking, but it's too late. I'm in my late 40s, my 50s. I've been this way for decades. You can't undo 30 years of living on autopilot. The window has closed. Sis, lean in because I'm leaning into you. I'm leaning forward as I say this. I need you to really, really, really hear me. It's not too late. It's not too late. I don't care if you're 45. I don't care if you're 55. I don't care if you're 65 and listening to this, thinking it is meant for someone younger. It's not too late. It's not too late to come home to yourself because the woman God created you to be didn't expire. She doesn't have a shelf life. She didn't have a deadline you've missed. She's not gone. She's dormant. And dormant things are not dead things. They are waiting things. They are things waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. And you know what the right condition is? Permission. That's it. Permission. She's not waiting for a conference. She's not waiting for a plan. She's not waiting for your kids to grow up or your schedule to clear. She's waiting for you to say, I'm ready to know you again. She's waiting for you to say, I'm ready to know you again. And I want to bring this back to what we anchored in earlier, Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. God knew you before any role was placed on you. He knew you before you became the fixer, the matriarch, the one who carries everything. He knew the woman underneath all of that. And he didn't just know her, he set her apart. He looked at her and said, this one, she's specific. She's intentional. She's mine. Not the performing version, not the one with the impressive resume, not the one who can manage a crisis without breaking a sweat, the one who likes what she likes, the one who dreams what she dreams, the one who laughs at things that nobody else finds funny, the one who gets excited about things she can't explain, the one who has a way of seeing the world that is hers and hers alone. That woman was set apart. And no amount of years on autopilot can undo what God set apart before you were even born. So here's my invitation for you in this moment. I want you to take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, and I want you to do something that might feel strange. I want you to close your eyes and picture yourself, not the current version, not the one managing everything, the younger version, the one before the world start placing orders. Maybe she's a teenager, maybe she's in her 20s, maybe she's a little girl. Whoever comes to mind first. What did she love? What made her eyes light up? What did she do when nobody was watching and nobody was grading her? Just let her come to you. Don't analyze it. Don't judge it. Don't it as childish or irrelevant or impractical. Just see her because that's not a stranger, sis. That's you. She's still you. She didn't leave. She just got buried under decades of doing and performing and being what the world ordered, but she's still there. And the fact that you can picture her right now, the fact that something in your chest just moved, that tells you everything that you need to know. She's not gone, she's waiting. And God has been keeping her safe this whole time, waiting for this exact moment. The moment you decided to sit still long enough to remember her. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know what comes next. You just have to be willing to say, I want to know who I am again. That's enough. That's the beginning of everything. So here's what I want you to carry with you this week: one truth, just one. You are not what you do. You are who God said you were before you ever did anything at all. That's the foundation. That's the thing the world tried to rewrite and almost succeeded, but almost is not finished. And the fact that you're here listening to this, feeling what you're feeling right now, that's proof that the real you is still in there, still breathing, still wanting to be acknowledged. And this week, you have an assignment. It's small, it's simple, and it might be one of the hardest things you've done in a while because it's going to require you to pay attention to yourself 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. I want you to ask yourself one question: what do I actually want right now? And then honor the answer. Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, in the moment, even if it's small, especially if it's small, because the small things are where you start to find yourself again. The small preferences, the small desires, the small moments where you chose you, not because you were being selfish, but because you were being real. And here's what I know is going to happen: some of you are going to try this, and the first thing you're going to feel is guilt. You're going to ask yourself what you want, and the second an answer surfaces, a voice in your head is going to say, that's selfish. You don't have time for that. Other people need you. When that voice shows up, and it will, I want you to remember Jeremiah 1:5. You were known before you performed a single thing. Your desires are not inconveniences, they are clues. Clues to the woman God designed before the world start covering her up. Follow the clues, sis. Even the small ones, they're leading you home. Now, next week, we're going to keep going because here's what I've seen happen in my own life and in lives of the women I walk with. You start to wake up. You start to sit still. You start to ask yourself what you actually want, and then something sneaky happens. You start to fill the space with new distractions, not the old ones, not the busyness and the to do list, new ones, noble sounding ones, the next book, the next course, the next plan to figure yourself out. And before you know it, you're running again. It just looks different this time. So, next week's question is one that is going to require some real honesty. And I want to let you sit with it between now and then. What if your packed schedule isn't a sign of purpose, but the most socially accepted way to avoid what you're really feeling? This is a deep question. So I'm going to give it to you again. What if your packed schedule isn't a sign of purpose, but the most socially acceptable way to avoid what you're really feeling? Yeah, that one's going to be a real conversation. It's a deep question. I will meet you right back here to discuss that question next week. And until then, keep asking, sis. Keep listening. Keep choosing yourself in the small moments because that's where she is, sis. That's where you are. Now, before I go, some of you may be asking, well, Dr. Phyllis, did you ever figure out that answer to your fun? And I did. I realized that I love having the ability to get outside, to feel the air on my face, to look at the stars, to be able to talk to people, to feel, to be present in the moments, to be responding and not reacting. And a real source of fun for me is committing my heart to doing this work with you and our Awake and Aligned Woman community. It has been so much fun with the women I've talked to, the women that I've journeyed with. This is fun. And I look forward to continuing to grow with you. So, this is Dr. Phyllis. And I hope that if this has been helpful to you, that you'll share it with another woman who could benefit from it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can grow our community, our network of awake and aligned women. I'll see you next time. Love you much. Bye now.